That's a technique that I love using for my children, but also for myself when I'm really struggling. And my husband is now trained to use that with me too. So yeah,
Oh,
find
I
your
love that.
toolbox. Yeah.
My toolbox is I'll just go have a wank.
That also works, people. Yes, go do that too. That's a more fun version.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Finish Podcast. We are your hosts, Hayley and Abi. Hayley, welcome back.
Hello, welcome, and hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. How has your week been, Hayley?
My week. I've forgotten. Well, to be fair, if anyone listens to the last episode, I've still been crying over Spain, to be honest.
That's kind of what I was leading with.
Yeah. I just want to make me say that out loud. Yes, I cried yesterday. I cried this morning. I cried the other day. Just no crying whilst running and no Spanish people looking at me with weird faces.
It was just British people this time.
Just British people. Yeah. Don't care about them. Yeah. How about you? How's your week been?
To be fair, this week we're only on, Wednesday today, so we're already halfway through. It's been a slightly better week than it was last week, if I'm honest. And I think that was something that we kind of wanted to tailor this episode around because, in line with the whole finish and, how our lives really that put together, it's quite important to hold our hands up sometimes and say, do you know what? I'm not fine. And I think that's what you did last week. And I think this time is kind of like my side to be like, I'm not fine. I mean, I've not ugly cried though, so I think I'm winning.
You've not had any people look at you weirdly as you've been on runs.
I mean, I've just not run, to be fair. That's how I avoid it.
You're also not a massive crier like I am, are you? You do cry, but I don't think you cry as much as I do. I cry over everything.
I don't think I don't cry as much as you. Like I remember, like I think you gave me advice last year, like when I went through like my horrible breakup, and I just could not cry. I just couldn't process everything that happened, and you were like, you just need to cry. Just when you feel like you need to, don't stop yourself. Just let it out. And I would be here in my living room, forcing myself to cry, and I'd be scrunching my face up and I'd start thinking of sad things. There was one point where I started putting on those like cat rescue programs where there's loads of cats that are just walking the streets and it's really sad music to try and force myself to cry. Like tears just would not come. And I was like, right, it's not happening. I'm not crying.
God. But you cry now. You do cry now.
I can't do it. My tear ducts work. They're not blocked or anything. Like, I can cry.
Not like your heart.
It works a little bit.
Just a little teeny bit.
I think my crying is one of these things where because I don't do it that often, when I do have a cry, it's usually like proper, like snot everywhere. You know, when you're just like not able to breathe and you're just like, it's like that.
Yeah.
And it's usually just like really horrendous. And then you always like feel better afterwards and you like wipe your nose. You just get up from the floor where you've just been crying for 2 hours and you go, right, I'm gonna have some food now.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I find it like a release. It's like getting rid of energy from your body when you just let it out. Whereas I do that a lot. I am a big crier, but as you know, I don't cry in front of people. I really hate it when people see me cry. And when people find out that I'm a big crier, they're quite surprised because in my day-to-day life, I come across as this really confident, competent professional that goes about her day, manages people, stands up and talks in front of hundreds of people. And I'm absolutely fine. Yeah, I then come home and like cover myself in a duvet and just like sob into my pillow. It's so different to what people expect. You've only seen me cry a couple of times, haven't you? I don't know if you can remember the times that you have seen me cry. I remember the times you've seen me cry.
I think I've seen you cry more on a plane.
Yes,
I
that's
think we're on
exactly
like
the time.
100% success rate of you crying on a plane. Like if ever I'm just feeling bad about myself and I just want to see Hayley cry, get her on a plane and I'll be like, guaranteed she will cry.
Pretty much. Yeah. That's your torture for me, isn't it? I'm just going to shove Hayley on a plane and she'll
Just shove her on a
not
plane.
just cry, but have a like full-on panic attack probably.
Yeah. But she'll be fine as long as she's at the back of the plane. Dying now.
Yeah, for anyone that listens to the last episode, I feel very safe at the back of the plane. Anyway, though, I'm not going to gloss over what you've just said at the beginning. So you said that this week's been a bit better than last week and that sometimes we have to be brave and admit that we're not okay or not fine. Talk to me about that. What was the other week like?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, really. And I think there was a load of different things that happen, like when things happen in your life and it doesn't really impact you too much, but it's something and it chips away at you, doesn't it? And then something else happens and you kind of go, that sucks, but it's fine. I'm still okay. And then something else happened. You're
Yeah.
like, whoa, that really sucked, but I'm still okay. It's fine. And you know you're fine because you're wearing the mask and you go to work and you look after yourself and you cook your dinners and you go and see your friends. So you know you're functioning. Whereas
Yeah.
sometimes it gets to a point where something then happens again and the mask comes off and you just go so muted and you just kind of, for a little while, you become like in this little mess. I always describe it as like, like when kids would do a really angry scribble on a piece of paper with their pencil. That's
Mm.
kind of like how it all just feels inside your head and inside your chest. And it just really, so my mood was really low. I just couldn't seem to pick myself up out of it. I just didn't want to talk to people. I was ignoring people, not because I genuinely like meant to ignore them, just because even the thought of sending a single text message just felt so incredibly hard. And then
Yeah.
something interesting that I found was happening. So even though my mood was low and I felt relatively aloof, I guess, uncaring, unbothered, my anxiety just went through the roof. All of a sudden, I was
Mm.
feeling anxious about things that I haven't felt anxious about in such a long time. And I was having anxiety attacks. Like whenever I would go into my car, I was having these horrible anxiety
Mm.
attacks, like being really anxious about work, being really anxious about my friendships. And like when this horrible little voice is in your head and it just whispers to you and it's like, none of your friends like you.
Oh,
And
oh
it's
my
like
God.
those sort of things. And it's like, you're really shit at your job and your bosses don't like you. That sort of voice starts to creep in. And then on top of that,
Yeah.
I then started feeling anxious just about my appearance. I started worrying, have I put on weight since
Mm.
Christmas? Just suddenly started seeing myself different. And then I just found that all I could do was just lay in a fetal position, either in bed or on my sofa. And so it was just, it felt like a heavy week. It just felt like a heavy
Mm.
week. And you have to go to work and you have to try and look like you're okay. And it's almost like you cannot, like, if anybody sees that you're not okay, that's a really bad thing. And so we have to try and push through it. And it sucks that we have to do that because then ultimately just probably makes things worse. But
Yeah.
again, that's why I thought actually this would be quite a good thing to talk about today because we're trying to be fine. And if anyone
Yeah.
was to say, like, are you okay? 'Cause you've been really quiet. You go, I'm fine. And it was genuinely one of those weeks where I would say, I'm fine. My boyfriend
Mm.
would be like, are you okay? I'm fine.
Yeah.
And you just can't express yourself. You can't give the words and you're not fine. Everyone knows you're not fine, but we're just got to pretend we're fine because the alternative is not good enough, basically.
I'm so sorry you felt like that. And I had no idea that you were feeling like that. And we've been friends for a very long time. We do this on a weekly basis. We chat a lot throughout the week because we are working on promoting the podcast. We are talking about topics. So, we have regular communication. And I had zero idea that you were not okay, that you were not fine. So it just shows, doesn't it, how good we are at plodding
Yes.
along through life and pretending that we are fine. So,
Honestly,
but I,
if there are awards for it, I swear to God, we would win every single time because
yeah,
we're so good at doing it. And every single
yeah,
time as well, we always end up like talking to each other. Like when you've been in a bit of a rough patch or if I've been in a rough patch, usually by the time we come out of it, we open up and we say, oh, hey, I was in this shit heap about 2 weeks ago, but I'm fine now. And we always have
yes,
a conversation of, then why didn't you tell me? Just, you can call me whenever. I'd be like, do you know what? Yeah, you're
yeah,
right. I need to talk to you and be more open about it. And then you find yourself in the exact same position again and you don't do it. And it's just
yeah,
like, I
yeah.
can't talk to anybody.
We're both really bad at doing that. And I think it's really useful for listeners to hear that despite being best friends, being really close, we've been friends for a long time now, we still struggle with opening up to each other. And I almost feel like if we can't do it, then what hope does anybody else have? I'm laughing, but it's actually not, it's not okay. That's actually really sad. But you're right. We do tend to always open up afterwards, don't we? And we've done that ever since we met. We would go through really dark times. And considering that our mental health was much worse when we first met, we would go through the darkest of days and then we would come out of it and then be like, oh yeah, I was really struggling. And we would joke about it, wouldn't we? We would like laugh about how suicidal or how badly we were struggling and how much we hated ourselves 2 weeks ago, but then just act as if it was this some sort of comedy show that was on.
Mhm.
It's really bad, isn't it, that people still do that we still do that.
Yeah.
And I guess part of the reason we're doing this podcast is to get people talking more about how it's okay to not always be perfectly fine and that some of us are just fine-ish, some of us are not fine at all. So, yeah. Is there
Yeah,
like
very.
did anything happen? Was there a trigger or yeah,
I
like
think
where
there
did
was
that come from?
there was a couple of different things really. I'm not gonna really say too much just because it's personal to me, it's personal to other people. I think obviously we had like the Christmas period, which is stressful anyway. And I think I found out information like like varying points that were
Mm.
it was quite hard to hear, quite hard information to take in and to be aware of, like to do with other people. And you think because it's not directly linked to you, you don't realize, like, you don't think it's going to have much of an impact on you, but it does. It's one of those chips, just another like kind of chip into the pot, isn't it? And there was something, I found out some information like that was to do with me and like to do with my group of friends that made me doubt like the last couple of years of my life, or the last few years of my life, and what people's real opinions were. And that messed with my head a little bit. And then I got this
Mm.
paranoia, and I think everything just kind of like bubbled again into that big massive squiggle where you can't really make sense of anything, and your brain starts
Yeah.
whispering dirty, horrible messages to you, not the fun kind. You usually, I mean, you're probably saying, but we usually do a really good job at challenging those thoughts when they come into our minds. And like, if
Yeah.
CBT has taught us anything, guys, is that, we usually catastrophize things and we have to challenge the thoughts. But eventually you let one voice slip in, it all slips in and it's got you, and you've been
Mm.
taken basically by the demons.
Mm.
So it was a couple of things. So I know it was triggered by something, but I just find it so interesting how even when like you just feel so low and you're not able to do anything and you barely even function, that all of a sudden the one thing that you do seem to be able to do is have anxiety attacks. And the anxiety is like this energy that's pulsing through a lifeless body, basically. And it's so annoying. It's so annoying because it's just like, why am I suddenly now worried about whether I'm good at my job or not? It's so stupid. Like I've just, as you know, Hayley, I've recently had a promotion at work and I've been really excited about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been really
Congratulations.
excited, really excited about it. And again, the anxiety was just making me think, I can't do this. I can't do that.
Mm.
That's just, I'm incapable of doing that. And we've just taken on third year university student who I've been the lead educator for. And my brain was telling me that I shouldn't even be doing that. Like, who
Mm.
am I? What the audacity of me to think that I could be teaching the younger generation anything because
Mm.
I'm like thick. And it's just the stupid things that your brain tells you. So it's just been a lot of paranoia, bad thoughts, and just anxiety that I just
Mm.
I struggled to get hold of it, to be honest.
And how did you?
Realistically, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say like this. I'm not used to having moments like this over time. Unfortunately, it's kind of a sad thing, actually, isn't it? Unfortunately, you get to the point where you become so used to it that you know how, like, what the time frame is of when you're going to start like coming back up again, and you kind of know
Yeah.
what the triggers are, and you know what you need to do. And I knew that I needed to just take like a solid 3 days where I just couldn't talk to anybody. I couldn't eat.
Mm.
I could barely sleep. I just couldn't. I was so muted, and you give yourself that time, and then you kind of go, right, well, I can't do this now. I need to start doing things again. I mean, realistically, I think like something happened at the weekend that was quite worrying for me and a lot of people that I know, and it
Mm.
snapped me out of it. Like that whole idea that if like if you're introverted, but then you go to an event and there's someone more introverted than you, and suddenly you become extroverted because you need to like mother them. It's like
Mhm.
that when if someone's dealing with something that's harder and worse, you snap out of your thing because you're like, right, I need to give the 80% because this person can only
Yeah.
give 20. So I think that probably caused me to snap out of it. And now I'm fine.
Yeah. No, you're fine. I mean, I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if she's actually fine. She's just going to pretend. I'm glad you're feeling a bit better, though. Were there any particular strategies that you used, or is it literally for you a case of kind of withdrawing and just waiting for it to pass? And then, as you said, something else happened that was, in your perception, bigger, or somebody else required more attention, so that kind of brought you out of it. But were there any like strategies in the moment that helped you to navigate those anxiety attacks and thoughts that were coming in and all of that stuff?
So for the actual like anxiety attacks, so I was finding that I was mainly getting them when I went in the car, and I don't know whether it was like I would try and organize where the anxiety was coming from. I would be driving, I'd be shaking, like, literally you could hear my teeth chattering. And instead of like just succumbing to it and having that squiggle in your head, I kind of go, right, what is it that I'm worried about? And I start going
Mm.
through all of the options that it could be. And usually it would be the start of the day. So I'd be like, am I anxious about my visits today and work.
Mm.
And I'm like, because if it's that, why? Why am I anxious about them? And I've done this every single day for years. This is no different. I know what I'm doing. Why do I seem to think that today is going to be a day that I need to be worried about? And you kind of go through and go, okay, well, then that's fine. I don't need to be worried about that. I'm like, my friends, nope, last I checked, I've heard from people, everyone's doing okay. No one's angry at me. No one hates me as far as I'm aware. So I was like, that's
Yeah.
okay. My new relationship, that was really good. Like I'd be like, oh, I saw him last night or 2 nights ago or something like that. And that was absolutely fine. So I don't need
Mm.
to worry about that. And so it was just
Yeah.
going through and ordering it all and seeing. And then
Mm.
but ultimately you kind of go, okay, so there isn't anything. I shouldn't be anxious. And then it kind of like
I
just
love that.
settles.
I love that. It sounds like what you're describing is looking for evidence that are for or against your thoughts. So when I work with children and young people around anxiety, we often talk about being a thought detective. And children that experience anxious thoughts or automatic thoughts that come into their brains, I often get them to think about what evidence can you find? Let's be a detective. Can you find any evidence that supports the way that what you're thinking, or can you find any evidence that doesn't support the way that you're thinking? And more often than not, they can't find any evidence that supports
Mm.
the way they're thinking. So it's challenging their thoughts. And then instead, they start to replace those thoughts and go, actually, I don't really have anything to worry about. And that helps to physiologically calm you down. And then cognitively, you're kind of in a better place. That's a really,
Mhm.
really great strategy. As you know,
Yeah.
Abby, I'm not very good at doing that. I know all the stuff and I know how to do it. I'm really rubbish at putting that into practice. Like when I'm on a plane, I know it's so irrational. I know that that's safer. Being on a plane is safer than driving to the airport. I know that the likelihood of something awful happening is really, really minimal. And I can look at all the evidence and still just absolutely ignore it because I am so physiologically heightened that my whole mind and brain and soul are going absolutely wild. And then it just turns into fucking panic attacks. I'm like, great, this is fun.
I mean, I guess with like the plane thing, like I could get why you would be worried about that because a lot of people are. I don't think the plane, like anxiety about going on the plane, I don't think that's irrational because realistically, as
Mm,
humans, we're not supposed to fly. We're nothing that
mm,
like a solid object shouldn't technically fly. And
yeah.
so that's scary, and you look out the window and you see the floor all the way down the bottom. That's scary. That's genuinely, I think
Mm.
there's a lot of things happening. My question for you, Hayley. She
Oh, God.
probably knows.
Here
She
she
probably knows
goes.
what's coming. There's me basically, you were there like all comforting like my anxiety, and there's me basically being like, what the fuck was this anxiety attack about, Hayley? When me and Hayley went to Poland last year,
Oh,
and
God.
like Hayley was she was at a point where there was a lot of anxiety that was happening. And are you happy for me to talk about this, Hayley?
Yes, yes, I am.
Okay,
I
okay.
mean, I'm laughing internally, but also cringing. But yes, please go ahead.
So Hayley, there was a lot of anxiety. I think a lot of things were just causing anxiety attacks, panics, lots of fear. And we went to Poland, went to Warsaw, and we stayed in like what do you call them? It's not like a skyscraper because it's not like we're in America. It's a tiny, tiny skyscraper, but it was like up quite high, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a block of apartments that was very, very high. Can you remember what floor we were on?
I don't know, but I don't know.
It
It's probably like, I think we were like at least 15, 16, 17, maybe even more higher than that.
Yeah,
Like
it was
we were.
very high, very high.
And we had a balcony and there was there was a bedroom and then there was a sofa bed, and Hayley, she was very lovely and she took the sofa bed. It was a very nice bed and it was in the living room, and at the end of this living room you had the glass doors that led out to the balcony. Hayley was, I think it was the first night, wasn't it? I slept like a baby because, just, it was lovely, it was a comfy bed. Hayley, I don't think, got a wink of sleep. And I think you were on the phone constantly to your husband. And when she told me in the morning, and I was like, why? What happened? What was stopping you from sleeping? What were you so scared of, Hayley? What was keeping you awake?
I can't believe this is going to come out my mouth. So I was very anxious about the possibility that whilst I was asleep, there would be an earthquake. And whilst the earthquake was happening, I would roll out of the bed and then the building would kind of go sideways and then I would roll down the lounge and then I need to get through the story. And then somehow the doors would have been open or crashed or something. And then I would roll out onto the balcony and then somehow the balcony wouldn't have any barriers and then I would fall off the balcony and fall down 17 stories or whatever it was, and then, die. And that's all I could visualize in every time I closed my eyes, every time I was trying to get to sleep, I could literally visualize myself falling out the bed, rolling and falling off the building and dying. And that was like, we're laughing about it now, but you know how bad I was those few days that we were in Poland. The
Yeah.
anxiety was through the roof. And that was so irrational.
Now
Like
that I would say
that's
is
so
irrational.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild how crazy that is. Like, one, where did the whole earthquake thing come from?
Huh?
Two, if there was an earthquake, why does that automatically mean that I'm going to roll like with my duvet over me, out of the window? It's ridiculous. Yet there was nothing that I could do in that particular moment that was helping me other than speaking with my husband, because he's the only person when I'm that bad that knows how to ground me. I have to say, though, that's not my normal level of anxiety. I think I was in a particularly dark place at that point in time because some stuff
Yeah.
had happened in my personal life that had increased my anxiety significantly.
Mhm.
So I was in a kind of more constant state of fear, and I was very heightened at all times. But even so, that's so irrational. It didn't even link to the thing that had happened that initially caused the anxiety. Like, I can't see the link in any way.
Yeah.
So,
And then so it was really hard then, because usually when someone is they're full of anxiety, and or they're worried, or they're scared, or they're just not feeling too good about stuff, you as an outsider you want to try and help and take that away by helping them to kind of see, we don't need to worry about that. And it's really
yeah.
hard to kind of say to someone, you're not gonna roll out of bed, the door's not gonna magically open, you're not gonna roll out onto the balcony, and you're not gonna go up over the railing and then back down again. Like, that's just not gonna happen.
Mhm.
Because it doesn't matter how many times I would have said, "That's ridiculous, Hayley." It just wouldn't have it wouldn't have gone in. So
No.
I just kind of had to like smile and be like, "That's fun."
Yeah. I remember you saying to me, because I think you were getting quite concerned because it was getting so extreme. And I don't think you've seen me that bad before. And I remember you literally being like, that's not a fun way to live, Hayley. This is bad. And that's when I'm sure you
Yeah.
suggested that I like seek professional help or something at that point. And I'm just there like, but I'm a bloody psychologist. I teach people about anxiety. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I know about this stuff. I help children with anxiety, yet here's me worrying about rolling out of bed and falling off a bloody balcony. It's crazy. But I think that the context is really important there, that, there was other stuff going on. So my whole state, my whole being was heightened. Whereas I don't think that I'd have the same irrational fears now. It would still cross my mind because I am naturally a more heightened person. I think I'm kind of predisposed to experiencing anxiety more than the general public, perhaps. So I do have some very irrational and very wild thoughts, as we both know. But generally, I can manage those because I have developed this toolkit of strategies that I use on a daily basis because I have to. But for some reason, I was not able to use those in that particular trip. Like,
Yeah.
everything just completely went out the window. But actually, in those moments, for anyone that's listening and wondering, like, or thinking, I know somebody that's got it that bad. The truth is that you can't take that anxiety away from somebody. The best thing you can do is just sit with them and just kind of acknowledge what they're experiencing and just accept that for that person, that fear is very real.
Yeah.
Although we're laughing about it, it is funny now. And in the moment, Abby was looking at me like, what the fuck is this crazy woman on? Right? It is hilarious. But in that moment, every time I closed my eyes, that fear was so real that it kept me up to the point where I was absolutely exhausted. I was miserable. Like, I had to really push myself through the trip to get through it because the anxiety was so bad. Still had a great time. It was a great trip overall. But yeah,
It wasn't complete torture for you.
no. Lots of great moments, lots of lovely memories. We have some great videos that I laugh about a lot. But yeah, that particular moment was not nice.
But it does go to show, though, doesn't it, that like if there are people who haven't really ever experienced anxiety, and if that's you, anyone listening, you absolute lucky fucker, because what must that be
Hmm.
like? Wow. Um,
Yes,
or
yes.
or people who just don't get it that extreme. You can kind of see how some people kind of like say like to snap out of it, or they say like, oh, just stop worrying, or just don't worry about it. But for people who do experience anxiety, or whether they have in the past, it's just not that easy. And it doesn't matter whether you're fearing that the plane is going to fall out of the sky, whether you're going to magically roll out of bed and go over a balcony, whether you're worried that all of your friends hate you, or that like you're not good at your job. You can't
Yeah,
just snap out of it. And so actually, like,
yeah.
to try and talk yourself out of it is actually such a challenging thing to do. So if people are successful in talking themselves out of their anxiety, like
Yeah.
honestly, give yourself a pat on the back, because that is a really incredible skill to be able to do. And actually, you're not always able to do it, and that's also okay. If you just need to
Yeah.
ride it out and let it kind of like just sit and fester for a bit, that's also okay.
Today, my message to the public is please don't tell people to snap out of it. Don't tell people, oh, stop worrying. It's fine. Get over it. Like, that's the
Well,
worst thing that you can say to somebody that's feeling anxious. It's not going to help. One of the things, like, even if you don't believe that their fear is real, even if you think it's nonsense, just acknowledge what that person is experiencing, accept
yeah.
that that is their reality in that particular moment, and just validate what it's like for them. You might think it's silly. You might internally be having all these other thoughts and judgments about them. They're not helpful. They keep them to yourself. And that's something that my husband's had to work on over the years. Like when I first met him, he was very judgy, didn't really understand why I was experiencing such heightened anxiety. And my anxiety back then was kind of quite consistent. I was anxious a lot of the time, and it was much more extreme. And he used to constantly try to tell me to just stop worrying. And it was coming from a place of care. He thought that that was the right approach, but all it did was make me more cross, and then it
Mm.
would increase the anxiety. And we would just, get into this really vicious cycle. Whereas now he does the whole like validation thing. He's like, it's okay to feel like that, Hayley. And like on a plane, rather than trying to get me to stop crying or being upset, he will kind of just grab my hand, squeeze it tightly, because he knows that I like, firm touch, because I find that really helpful to kind of ground myself. And then he will kind of say to me, okay, Hayley, we know that breathing exercises work really well for you. So he kind of sometimes just pops an AirPod in for me, puts some really nice kind of meditation type music on or sounds, and then he'll just encourage me to do some breathing exercises, or he'll do them with me. He'll see that I'm really trying to implement the
Well,
strategies that I have, and he actually sits there and supports me with them. And I kind of had to get him to reflect on how he notices that that's much more helpful and that I overcome it much more quickly than if he's going on at me for being silly. So yeah, that's the way, people. Be kind.
I feel like, you know how, like, I don't know what episode it was, but you were talking about how you feel like you've got ChatGPT trained now.
Hmm.
I feel like that's your husband.
Pretty much. Yeah.
You've you've managed to
Yes.
train him. He now talks to you and responds to you like how you kind of want him to, and how you like, yeah, just like ChatGPT.
Absolutely. Yes. I've trained them well, all the men in my life.
It's lit
Yeah. I guess they like we've talked about two different types of anxiety there, haven't we? Which is around, we've got really irrational types of anxiety. And then it sounds like there was a particular thing or a couple of things that happened in your life which then triggered certain anxieties. I think there's something important to say here, which is how sometimes anxiety can be reframed as excitement. So there was something you mentioned around your anxieties around your student that you've now been supporting, and you were questioning whether you're good enough. Have I got that right?
Yeah. Yeah, just like basically because she basically depends on me to pass her placement, and I've not been lead educator before. And
Mm,
so I'm having to train her essentially and instill knowledge in her.
mm,
And it just is terrifying a little bit, because this is like somebody's life. And if I
mm,
don't do it properly, then she won't be able to do it properly. And so you just kind of,
mm,
when the anxiety is bad, it convinces you that you're shit at everything.
mm.
So I'll be
Yeah,
shit
yeah,
at
yeah.
this.
You'll be shit at that. Yeah. I hear you. I guess what do you think that anxiety is telling you though about that particular scenario? Right. There's another person involved and you are anxious about particular outcomes. So what does that tell you about you as a person?
Dear, I didn't know this was going to turn into a school lesson. If I know Haley, I'm going to guess it's something positive. So it means that I care about her and her training and her learning, and I want the best for her.
What we might perceive as a threat in our lives, right? You think about historically when we were hunters and gatherers, if we didn't experience anxiety and then we came across a lion, we wouldn't run or we wouldn't freeze or we wouldn't fight, right? We'd probably
Mm.
just get eaten and then we wouldn't survive. So anxiety is actually a really useful thing for humans to feel. The problem is when it becomes irrational and takes over our lives. But
Yeah.
it is extremely useful. But in the scenario that you've just described there, something that I've learned recently is how we can try to reframe anxiety as excitement. So rather than I'm really anxious that I'm not going to do a good enough job and I'm not going to, help this person to pass and then it's going to be all on me, you could try to reframe that and say, I'm really excited to be in this person's life. I'm really excited to support this person, to be part of their development. I have some nerves about it because it's my first time. But overall, the kind of physical sensations that I'm getting are telling me that I'm excited about it rather than I'm terrified. I don't know if that's kind of making any sense to you, but it's that,
It does, yeah.
physiologically, anxiety and excitement aren't actually that different. So by cognitively reframing it, that can be really helpful for people. It doesn't work if the outcome is genuinely bad. So if you're anxious or really upset about a loved one that's extremely unwell and the outcome is looking really bad, you're not going to change that. So I'm really excited. But when it's something like delivering a public speech, or, for example, I go in and do lots of training to school staff, you, for example, supporting your new colleague, your new student, those are moments when the outcome's probably going to be okay. It's probably going to be really fun. You're going to take lots from it. It's going to be a great experience. So rather than going in with this kind of anxious mindset, you can go in with this kind of excited mindset while acknowledging that you might have some nerves as well. But nerves are fine.
I like that. That's a
So,
really good way to think about it, to be fair. Do you think you could use that? Because that was, I think, something that I've been struggling with even just like for the last couple of months as well, which probably hasn't helped anxiety is, as you're aware, Hayley, I've recently gotten into a new relationship. And given how my previous relationship ended, it's been absolutely terrifying. Wonderful, but terrifying. And
Yeah.
I can tell there's a lot of anxiety there, a lot of fear. Like you start doubting everything, second guessing everything. And it's suddenly like this idea of love, which is supposed to be a really beautiful, wonderful, exciting thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is replaced almost or overshadowed by fear and anxiety because of like the trauma that you've had or I've had from my last partner. Is it possible to use that same thing of turning it into excitement, do you think? Like with relationship anxiety?
You're the only person that will know that for your particular scenario. I don't think anybody can tell you yes or no, that will absolutely work because it will be context dependent, person dependent. I think you could absolutely try to reframe it as in, I've had this really bad experience with relationships and I'm feeling nervous about going into this new relationship. But at the same time, you wouldn't be going into it and actually taking that step, would you, unless you wanted to? So there's got to be an element of excitement and hope. Yeah. So if you did try to reframe it and say, I'm really excited about the prospect of this relationship, if not, I wouldn't be taking these steps. I think you could try to do that whilst acknowledging that you're also going to be a little bit nervous and there is the possibility that it will go terribly wrong. But yeah, I think if you tried it, that's not going to happen, hopefully. But I think absolutely it's okay to try to reframe things as to say, I'm excited about what this could turn into. And I'm really excited about what's going to come out of this. But I'm also a little bit nervous and that's fine. But if we try to focus more on the excitement and the possibilities, there's less scope for the negativity to take over. Yeah, if we try to fill our brain with more positive thoughts, then the negative thoughts hopefully don't have as much space. I'm not saying that works in every single scenario. And of course, everyone's different. But I think it's definitely worth a shot in your case because you deserve all the happiness.
Oh, stop. Yeah, I think it's definitely worth giving it a go. I mean, whether or not I can do it, I don't know, because it's like you said, it's really hard in those moments to try and take away the anxiety or transform it in any way. But again, I suppose, it's just made me realize now, like the more that we're talking about it, the more you see anxiety and actually where anxiety creeps in. So like in your work, in your relationships, like your friendships, even like your hobbies, your self-esteem, like there's so many things that can be affected by anxiety. Like it's just this really horrible thing that just seems to get into everything. Like you finally have whatever it is that you have in your life, you can guarantee, boom, anxiety is there. It's like the gift that keeps on giving, like hemorrhoids, never really goes away.
Or it comes back. I absolutely relate to that. Yeah. Absolutely. I love the comparison. Trust Abby to come up with something like that. But no, you are so right though. And I think when we talk about anxiety, we are talking about an umbrella term. We don't have the time to go into masses of depth. We could talk about anxiety for hours. It's such a great topic. And I love anxiety, not of feeling it, but I love anxiety, the topic. But one thing I think is really important to mention is that there are different types of anxiety, different subtypes, if you like. So we talked a little bit about panic attacks, which could be linked with panic disorder. We've talked, phobias. I think quite a lot of people are quite familiar with phobias, aren't they? Especially like things like, I've got a spider phobia or a phobia of heights, for example. So they're quite common. but you'll know well that probably my biggest issue is related to health anxiety.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
is, people that really struggle with fear of illness. I have a massive fear of death, which we'll probably talk about in a separate episode. And that's extremely intense. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. We've then got OCD, for example, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, which is, again, another type of anxiety. We've got generalized anxiety. We've got social anxiety.
God,
So we've
yeah.
got all these different subtypes. So when we talk about anxiety, we're talking about this general umbrella term, but then, anxiety is normal and everybody experiences it to a certain extent. And anxiety is useful, as we've already said. It's when it impacts your daily life in a particular way. And then you can have like different types of the subsets of anxiety. You can have combination. It's, as I said, we could talk about this much, much more. But that's why I think it probably comes up into our lives in different ways. And so, for example, for me, health anxiety at the moment is probably my biggest issue. Whereas the kind of social phobia, not really a big issue for me. Whereas then it could be that 3 or 6 months pass, circumstances change, and actually the health stuff is kind of like leveled down a little bit, balanced out. And then suddenly I've got this kind of social anxiety stuff coming through. So it's that constant like up and down. It's a bit like a roller coaster. It's like never ending. It's just that anxiety is always there in different ways. It just shows up whenever it feels like it in different ways.
It is a bloody horrible roller coaster. Terrible. I used to get really bad social anxiety, so bad. I used to hate it, and I dread have to go like to group events or anything like that. And like when you just get so like locked inside your body, and you'd be inside your head, you'd be like, just talk, just say something, just do anything, Abby. But
Yeah.
like nothing happens, and your mouth stays shut, and your legs just stay still, and it's just even that I forgot about. But yeah, it is literally anxiety is everywhere. I mean, like realistically, at this point, you can just call it a pandemic, like pandemic 2.0, COVID 5.0, whatever we're on now, of
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
anxiety. But because it's mental, it's not taken as seriously as it. But actually, like if you were to, if all of the humans, I like to think of things like this sometimes. If you were to take all of the humans in the world, and like as you go out of your house and you see humans and they just lit up in a certain color or something, if we were to see all of the people who suffer with some form of anxiety like in green, I guarantee every single person would be green. Every single person. Apart from, like you said, if there genuinely is someone out there who has never had anxiety before, never gets nervous, is so relaxed and chilled, who did you sell your soul to? Seriously.
But you know what? I think I know that person. I'm not going to name them. It's somebody that I know very well and is a big part of my life. Abby, I will tell you outside of
I
this
know.
podcast episode. But I know one person who claims that they've never experienced an anxiety attack. They've never experienced the levels of anxiety that I've described. They don't ever get those kind of feelings. They don't really get nervous when they have interviews. And they walk around and talk about this as if they're proud. And where did you sell your soul to? Because I want to know and I want to do it.
I just don't get it. I just do not get it. I am
Yeah.
jealous. I am jealous. I
Yes.
will hold my hands up and I will say, yep, I am jealous. I have got the green-eyed devil in my eye because I would love to be like that. God, I would do anything not to feel anxiety. Like imagine if
Yeah.
like realistically, I think if you didn't have anxiety, what's the opposite of anxiety realistically? Like confidence. So
Yeah.
if
And
you're not
excitement.
yeah,
Excitement, confidence.
if you're not riddled with anxiety, technically speaking, you must if you're not scared to do something, you're eager to do something. If you're not doubting yourself, you're confident in your abilities. So to have your life, have gone all of your life genuinely believing in yourself and believing you can do anything. Wow, that must be amazing. What a life that must be.
I imagine it's really nice to live without this constant anxiety. However, I will say that my anxieties definitely keep me alive. And there are some things that I really value from my anxiety. Like they definitely make me pause and reflect. They make me think things through. People often say like how organized I am and how I have got everything planned out. And I'm really good at doing that, like thinking ahead. Not to a ridiculous extent, but I think about all the possibilities and then I've got plans for them. Whereas my husband, for example, will just not even think things through. So he doesn't think about the worst case scenarios, and the worst case scenario might easily come to him. right? And think about why is it that men typically don't live as long as women? Like, why are they more likely to die in ridiculous accidents? And, you've seen those videos of men making
Yes.
the most stupid decisions and then obviously dying from them or injuring themselves. Whereas
And they
actually a
say this is
woman,
why women live longer.
exactly, right? Because it's not just because women are like more rational, it's because we get, anxious about particular things. We don't want to risk
Yeah.
take this to the same level.
Mm.
So in many ways, I'm grateful for the anxiety because it is a natural, normal and useful emotion at times. I think, again, we just go back to this. If it's impacting your life too much on a day-to-day basis, which is certainly the case for me quite often, that's when I really wish that I could just say, fuck off, I don't want you.
Yeah.
But
God,
I
I
know a
wish we
few
could do that.
people, yeah, I know, yeah, I do. I know a few people who just claim that they don't ever experience it. And they've had to learn a lot because they have to deal with women that do experience it quite a lot. So, yeah.
I suppose that is the good thing, though, when you do meet other people who know exactly what it's like you don't even need to explain yourself. They're just like, bro, I get it. Like, it's
Yeah,
fine,
yeah.
girl. All right, let's bring that around then to Hayley's favorite time of the podcast, which is what does a Bob think? So we were thinking about like our question for today, just in case anybody hasn't listened to any of the other episodes. Bob is ChatGPT, and at the end of each episode, we will ask Bob for his opinion about something that we've spoken about in the episode. And so our question for Bob today is, what are the early warning signs that it's anxiety and not a full-scale life collapse? And this is coming from a very scared girly who constantly feels like the world is ending because of anxiety. So Bob says, oh my God, okay, Bob says, hello, fellow everything is on fire thinker. Well, a bit rude, Bob. Okay.
Oh, that's brilliant.
My Bob is very sassy, I've noticed. Says, here's how a lot of people, especially thoughtful, sensitive, anxious brains, can tell that this is anxiety talking rather than my life is genuinely imploding. So early warning signs that it's anxiety and not real crisis. The story escalates fast. You go from that message felt a bit off to, oh my God, they hate me, I've ruined everything, this will affect my future, I'll end up alone. Anxiety loves to speed run a catastrophe. Real problems usually unfold slower and with more nuance. It's so true, though, isn't it? So true. Goes from 0 to 100 so fast, and all of a sudden you've just thought of worst case scenario in every possible avenue.
Mm.
Number 2, everything feels urgent, even things that aren't. So suddenly you must decide right now. You must fix everything immediately. And if you don't act, something terrible is going to happen. Number 3, your body is louder than the facts. So this is something that Hayley will agree with. You notice the physical signs of anxiety. So a tight chest or throat, shallow breathing, nausea or butterflies, jaw, shoulder clenching, and feeling weird or shaky. So if your body is panicking before your brain has proof, then that's likely anxiety rather than your life imploding. Number 4, your mind reading and future telling. Yeah, I can imagine Hayley's just nodding. She's like, yep, I know all of this. So you assume that you know what people really think, how badly things are going to end, or that this is a pattern and not a one-off. Anxiety speaks in certainties about things that you can't actually know. And again, I think that's what helps me get out of stuff, is that whole idea of like grounding and looking for evidence where you're just like, why do I seem to think that? What proof do I have that that's what that person is thinking? And then the last one, reassurance helps, but only briefly. So you get comfort and think, okay, maybe it's fine. But 10 minutes later, you're thinking, but what if this part means something else? That's a rebound worry, which is a big anxiety tell. I usually like scrolling to the right to the very end of the Bob stuff, because he usually puts something in there that's like super cutesy, super demure. And it says here, there's a little love heart, and it says, from one scared girly to another. Bob is definitely a boy for me, so I don't know
Bobby
where
is a
he's getting
girl.
girly from. I was like, you're not a girl. Shut up, cat. You're not a girl. It says, you're not broken. You're not dramatic. You're not secretly failing at life. You're someone with a protective brain that sometimes pulls the fire alarm when you burn toast. If you want, I can help you make a personal anxiety versus reality checklist.
Oh God, I
You're
love
okay, Bob.
ChatGPT so much. That's really helpful though, and I have to agree with pretty much everything Bob has said there. I think it's really useful for people just to pause and reflect. Like, is this anxiety, or is there other stuff going on? Sometimes our lives are just imploding on us.
It does feel like that, though. It genuinely does feel like that.
Mm.
I think, yeah, it's just really, I think it's really helpful just to know those things, because take it from somebody that's just had like a couple of weeks of feeling like you've been absorbed by the anxiety devil. It's hard, it's shit, and it really does impact your life. And it can just hit you at any random point, and it can happen to anybody. Like, it doesn't matter how well you seem to think that your life is going or how well people think your life is going. We're all just human, and anxiety is a very human thing to feel. I think it just, if you're able to try and recognize that it's anxiety, that's going to help you navigate it a little bit better.
Yeah. And try to develop your personal toolkit to manage. We're not going to have time today to talk about things like going to the doctors and seeking out professional support, and is medication the right thing or not. We can leave that for another episode. But I think if you are experiencing anxiety, or if you have a loved one that is experiencing anxiety, there are so many things that you can personally do to help manage it a little bit better. There's plenty of resources that you can find online, and a lot of the time it is the simple stuff that helps. I think we often expect somebody to come in with this magic wand and make your life better, but actually a lot of the stuff is stuff that we can be doing with support from our loved ones. So I love that we've talked about challenging the way that we're thinking, looking for evidence of our thoughts, like is there evidence for or against the way that we're thinking. Breathing exercises really help. They physiologically help to calm us down. And then I'm just going to share one of my favorite ones, which I actually use with my children as well. I've used it with my 7-year-old. So it's called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. So my little one was having a bit of an anxiety attack not all that long ago, and I used this with great success. So you essentially just, in really calm language, you would ask the person to identify 5 things they can see. Okay, so say, sweetheart, tell me 5 things that you can see. Get them to name them. 4 things you can feel. Get them to name them if they can. 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Okay, so by taking them through those 5 senses and getting them to almost distract their mind from what's happening, get them to focus on those different senses, again, can physiologically help to calm you down. So that's a technique that I love using for my children, but also for myself when I'm really struggling. And my husband is now trained to use that with me too. So yeah, find
I
your
love that.
toolbox. Yeah.
My toolbox is I'll just go have a wank.
Also works, people. Yes, go do that too. That's a more fun version.
You do you, boo. Whatever's going to help. Hayley's hosting me right now.
That is a great way to end an episode, everyone. I'm going to end on go and have a wank if you are feeling a little bit nervous or a little bit stressed from everything you've just heard. That will release you.
Just go and have a release. It'll help. Trust me, it'll help. But no, thank you very much, Hayley, because that was really helpful, especially given the fact, obviously, you know a lot about this stuff. And I feel like your advice is so valuable and so many people would really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you to you for bringing the topic and sharing. And I'm sorry that you've been feeling that way. We say this every time, Abby, let's do better at telling each other when we're not okay. I don't want to hear about it 2 weeks later. I want to hear it in the moment. Not when you're wanking, though, just when you're anxious and in a fetal ball curled up.
I can't promise that, Hayley. If you hear vibrations in the background, you hear what you hear.
I hear what I hear. But anyway, thank you so much. It's been a great episode and I can't wait for the next one.
That's been good. See you, everybody.
Bye.